right, so we finally made it. November 17th. Monarch Legacy of Monsters. This video, I'm going to try to go through both episodes in this video, but if it gets a little bit too long, then I might cut it and just switch it into two videos. But I'm not going to give what you would call a traditional review. I know a lot of you guys who are going to watch this video have seen the episode already. So, and we're going to talk a lot about it tonight on the live stream. Well, and if you're going to come to the live stream, just so you know ahead of time, there's going to be full spoiler discussion. So if you have not seen the show, you don't want to be at the live stream. So I just kind of want to talk about some of the things I like about the show and also kind of cater this video to people who might stumble upon it and want to get an idea of whether or not the show is worth it. You guys know me as much as I am a Godzilla fan and a monster fan. I don't really pull punches. If it's good, it's good. If it's not, it's not. And it doesn't matter whether I'm a big fan of it or not, because if you're coming here, you want to know if it's worth your time. And in this case, worth your money. So Legacy of Monsters, first two episodes were released last night on Apple Plus TV. To my surprise, they actually released it early. I was expecting it to come out at midnight, but I started watching the episodes at around 11:45. There were some other people who reported that it was even available earlier than that. So, but yes, so Legacy of Monsters takes place roughly about a year after the events of San Francisco from the Godzilla 2014 movie. And the main character here is a young Japanese-American woman named Kate. And she basically is traveling to Japan to kind of settle her father's affairs, who had recently, they found out, passed away. And from that point forward, you kind of get an idea of what the world is like ever since the attack on San Francisco. Japan has their own protocols to prepare for the landfall of a kaiju, specifically Godzilla. They kind of highlight this in early episode. The first episode pretty much covers a lot of what you've seen in the trailer, so there's not a whole lot of spoilers there. Whatever you saw in the trailer, most of it was in the first episode, and then the second episode has other parts that you were seeing in the trailer. So I think this is probably one of the reasons why they released the first two episodes, because in terms of seeing anything big or eventful, you kind of seen it already. But this is where I got to give the show credit and give it a highlight. If you're coming to the show for a super duper monster rampage adventure, you're not going to get that. A lot of us who are fans of the kaiju genre and have been following the Monsterverse knew way in advance going into this, you're not going to get a lot of monster action. That doesn't mean you're not going to get monsters, but you're not going to get a whole lot of monster action. Now, we still have some more episodes to go, but the first two episodes really set the foundation for what's to come. One of the things I got to give credit to the show for is I have a rule with television shows, and if the first three episodes don't grab me, I tend to kind of veer off. They have to be at least good enough to keep me coming back. But at the same time, usually the first 3 or 4 episodes of a new show tend to be a bit of a slow burn. This is no exception. It is a bit of a slow burn, but they do a very good job keeping you interested by setting up this kind of mystery. Now, I think for you to kind of appreciate some of the things they've done, you kind of do have to have some knowledge of the Monsterverse, especially the 2014 movie. But for the most part, I think, especially the way the first episode ends, I think they do a good job of keeping you engaged into what the story is. So this young lady travels to Japan to settle her father's affairs. And at this point, the mystery already starts, and from there starts to unravel through investigation. It's not one of those shows where it's like young tweens that are kind of annoying. These are young adults. They've established their careers. And one of the things that surprised me about the show, knowing what I've known going into it, is just how expansive this family mystery is. And of course, people want to call me when I'm in the middle of a video. It happens all the time, of course. And I got to take this because it's my dad and it probably has something to do with the house. So we're going to pause here. All right, we're back. Sorry about that. There is a lot going on here. And if you know, you know. So, but anyway, we'll talk about that later. So so going into the show, as I was mentioning before, there is a large... The whole legacy and the family connections actually are a lot bigger than even I thought. It goes deep, but I was kind of thrown off here by this because I had a good mindset of what I was going to say, and the phone call threw me off. But to try and go through this without spoiling anything, and also kind of encouraging new viewers to maybe check this out. So they do a good job of setting up this mystery right out the gate, and it of course, it's not going to fully unravel. You know how shows are. You got to watch it all the way to the end of the season, and then there's a big bomb, and then there's, at least that's what I expect. But they do a good job of setting it up and starting to slowly unravel it with, again, I don't want to spoil it, but there's something that's kind of fucked up. So, but also one of the things I want to say about the show that I really enjoy is that it looks to be more on the darker side. When you watch the Monsterverse movies now, like Godzilla vs. Kong or Godzilla King of the Monsters, everything is shown from such a grand scale. And I've always said, one of the things that I find more effective when it comes to these monster movies is when you get a more ground level idea of what's going on. 2014 did a good job of this, which is why it's still my favorite Monsterverse movie. But they kind of capitalized on that too in this show. Like, there are some dark moments during flashbacks that, you don't expect them to go there, but they do. And again, I don't want to specify it, but it has to do with how these Titans and how Godzilla affect people on the ground during an attack. So when you see these scenes, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's not exclusive to Godzilla. It's also some of the other monsters. There is a new monster that you will see in these first 2 episodes, and there are some similarities. And I'll mention this one because it's not a spoiler. It was in the trailer, and if you've seen 2014, you've seen this as well. But there is like a Muto nest that they go to, and there's some pretty crazy shit that happens here too that you just didn't see in the movie. So speaking of the past, this is another thing I'd compliment the show of. When I heard that they'd be jumping from the past to the future and back to the past, it sounded to me like, I wonder if that's going to work, if it's going to seem disorienting. But they actually do an excellent job with this as well. One of the things they do is in the very beginning, when they go to flashbacks and they come back to the present, they'll tell you where they are, what year. Once they kind of establish the flow of how they're doing that, they don't do it anymore, and it becomes pretty seamless. When they're in the past, when they're in the present. Even the scenery or the saturation of the scenes change from the past to the present. So you'll know clearly when they're jumping between time periods without it having to tell you. Because I think over a long period of time, it would have been annoying for them to consistently flash, this is 19 this is 19 this is 20 this is 20 this. They do it for like the first several times, and they kind of establish the differences between the 2 time periods. And then from that point forward, it just goes from past to present or past to present without giving you a text to tell you. By this point, So they did a good job with that as well. Opening credit scenes, I just want to jump to this real quick. I like it. It kind of reminds me of like shows like The Fringe, which I was a big fan of. The whole mystery music. And one of the things I love the most is at the very ending of the starting credits is they'll show the Monarch logo peeling back, but then you see Godzilla's silhouette in the Monarch logo, so that's very cool. One of the things I've always wanted from the Monsterverse was something more information about Monarch. I've always wanted to know who the leaders were. I've always wanted to know how it started. Well, you're going to know how Monarch started within the first 2 episodes. They very clearly established that. That's not to say that the people who started it are necessarily the leadership or necessarily running it present day, but they show you how it starts. Kind of like, you start a company and then you get investors, and kind of the investors become the boss or the owners of the company. So you kind of get the sense that that's how Monarch started. You had it start by certain people, and then as it grew and as things grew, obviously they weren't running the show sometime later. But you definitely get a concrete establishment of who started Monarch, which is really cool. A lot of you guys are going to like some of the things they reference in the show, like cryptozoology comes up. The new monster, you guys saw it in the trailer. It's not a big surprise, but they don't really give it a name yet. At least in these first 2 episodes, they refer to it as a dragon. It's kind of funny. And its location and stuff like that are very different in terms of what we're used to. But again, I think the characters are really good. Kate is a bit of Kate, who's the main character. She's a bit slighted, and so she comes off a little bit cold in the beginning. But there's a good reason for that. There's another character named Kentaro who is indirectly he meets Kate in the very beginning of the show, and they're kind of connected indirectly in certain ways. And again, you'll find out when you watch the show. And then from there, you meet the other main character whose name is May, and you kind of find out how they all intertwine. May is basically like an ex-girlfriend of Kentaro, so you'll see how that starts and how they all kind of come together. And then they start to unravel Monarch. And one of the things I love in terms of how they display Monarch here is not necessarily in the positive light that you would think. Monarch kind of tends to have a more positive light in the movies, where I can tell you right now in the first 2 episodes, it doesn't really come off that way. They kind of come off, at least in the early going, as a shadow company that is just as fucked up as any other government shadow company that you might have seen in a movie or heard of in conspiracy theories or, kind of black ops type stuff. So that's really cool. There's not a whole lot of humor, which I kind of find that refreshing. Like whatever humor is there is more organic, and it's not cheap. It's not something that's trying to like get a cheap laugh out of you, the younger William Randa in the show is kind of like, I would consider the lightheartedness, but not in a way that you would think, oh, this is corny. Not like the gonorrhea joke you got from King of the Monsters. It's just part of his personality. It feels more organic. Some of the newer characters we meet, other than the kids, is we meet Dr. Kaiko Miura, who is a doctor, and she's following radiation trails. I don't want to say around the world, but the way it starts off, she kind of starts off in the Philippines, and then that's kind of where things start to map out. Again, I don't want to give too much away, but in terms of visuals, what you've seen in the trailer so far, you'll get in the show. Is Godzilla around? Of course he's around. Whether or not you see him, well, I will say, because again, it's been shown already in the trailers, the one time you do see him in these first 2 episodes is the very shot you see in the trailer where he's kind of turning around, he's roaring at the girl. But there's a scene a little before that, or during that scene, that kind of refers to what I was talking about before in the early part of the video, in terms of what the impact is of having these monsters around when you're literally there looking up at them, which is, that to me is what makes a kaiju movie, or in this case a show, effective. What is the ground level reaction? What does it look like from the person experiencing it from the ground level? This is one of the reasons I'm very excited about Godzilla -1. Speaking of Godzilla -1, there was something funny they did in the show. I don't think it had anything to do with Godzilla -1, but there's a scene where it cuts to San Francisco 5 days after the events, and it says G-Day +5, and I'm like, oh, I said both of them are playing on numbers now, so just kind of cool. I don't think it's a direct reference. I just thought it was kind of funny, Godzilla -1, and then over here we had G-Day +5, so it's like, But anyway, I think I'm gonna end it there. We're gonna talk a lot more in detail tonight about the show. We're gonna get into spoilers, a little bit of speculation, 2 very good episode cliffhangers, and I think the show's off to a good start. Honestly, I was a little bit afraid of how a show that is based off a universe that's full of monsters, how it would perform, knowing that it's not really going to give you a lot of monster action. And now seeing the first 2 episodes and how they're kind of setting things up, I'm very intrigued. I like where it's going, and I'm looking forward to seeing how things unravel. And so far, the actors are very good. I don't recognize a whole lot of them, I'll be honest. But the ones that I don't recognize have done very well. And the ones you do recognize, Wyatt Russell, Kurt Russell, obviously you expect them to perform, and they do well. So far, characters are good, storyline is solid to start off, mystery is starting to unravel, and it's intriguing. And the time jumps are not, to me, at least in my opinion, based on how they established them, are not like, jolting or anything, or get you lost. They kind of keep you in the loop. And I think the saturation change is a good job of doing that as well. To you can notice the difference. But outside of that, I would say check it out. You can get it. You can get a free trial for Apple Plus, and you can get the first episode for free as well. So, but otherwise, we'll talk more about it tonight on stream. I don't know what time I'm going to start yet, but it's going to be no later than 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard, slightly earlier. But otherwise, let me know in the comment section what you thought of the first 2 episodes. I'm into it. And the next episode's Wednesday, so that'll be a lot of fun. We'll get to check that out Wednesday. And then we'll go from there. Anyway, guys, that's it for this video. This is Rob signing off for E.T.N, where we don't do news, we just talk entertainment. Take it easy.